What's up guys, TechLab here, and recently we've been going through our inventory looking for Mini ITX parts and components for builds that we want to do in the future. And in the back we came across another Mini ITX tower case. Now this case is pretty funky and it's pretty interesting, and today we thought we'd share it with you. So this case is the InWin B1 Mini ITX tower. It's a little bit different, it's a little bit funky, and we don't generally see that many InWin cases anymore. We used to see lots of them in the past. But when we do see them now, they tend to be pretty interesting, and this is no different. It comes wrapped out of the box in some kind of fabric holder, which is pretty cool. It kind of gives it that exclusive kind of feel. We'll take it out of that, and as you can see, it's a little bit different to what you're used to. It's a bit of an egg shape, although not so much, more of a rounded rectangle more than anything. And it's pretty small. It also can orientate in two different ways. You can either have it horizontally like this, or you can have it vertically, and you'll need the extra stand. Now the extra stand wasn't in the box because when I actually took this out to just double check it back when we actually bought it, I couldn't get it back in the box. I don't know how they did it, it's pretty tight, but the stand looks a little bit like that. And the case will sit up just on there, just like that. And as you can tell, it looks pretty funky. The extras you get with the case are actually contained inside it, and if we just pull it out, we have a plug. This is not a UK plug, as you can see, so you will have to buy an extra one of these, and it's not a standard kettle plug. It's actually one of these 3-pin kind of weird things. So we're going to chuck that away. We do have a UK version of it, so we can get the machine up and running. And they also give you a little bag of extras, which has got your cable ties, your different screws and things like that, and some extra padded feet here. And this is because when you actually mount it in a vertical way, you can actually take these feet off and just cover them with the pads, so it makes it look a little bit tidier. The case has a pretty standard layout. On the front you have the I/O, you have a power button. There's no reset button, but you have an audio and a USB 3. They're all actually mounted on the inside too. The top is actually the exhaust ventilation, or the right hand side if you were to put it this way around, whereas the bottom is the intake for all the air. So there's not actually that much airflow that you can get through this, particularly because this model is the one with the tempered glass panel. Now this panel is actually quite thick, so you're not going to break it very easily, and that's a good point because you can't actually change just the glass in this. They do a mesh version, which I would probably recommend if you're not too interested in the glass, because there are some issues with this particular model in terms of thermal capability. On the back, it's pretty standard. We have a place for an I/O shield, as well as where the power supply sits there. Now the keen-eyed of you will actually notice that there is nowhere to put a graphics card in this. There's actually nowhere to actually put any other expansion cards at all, which means this case is specifically designed for APU or iGPU builds. Now we all know that Intel aren't very good when it comes to iGPUs, particularly when it comes to gaming performance, but AMD are actually releasing some crackers at the moment, so it would make a perfect case for one of them. Now to open this case up, you will need a screwdriver, and it's not that difficult. There's only a few screws to it. The first thing we'll do is we'll actually take the bottom off, and this is where these feet are, and you'll see a little bit of a hidden compartment. All it takes is the two metal into plastic screws on the bottom. Make sure you don't mix them up because they are specific ones that will eat into the plastic itself. And then just lift the feet out like that. It's got two tabs at the front, so you need to slide it backwards. And then as you can see inside there are two inbuilt caddies for your 2.5-inch SSDs or hard drives. They've also had a cutout blank here, which we found is pretty useful for motherboards that have M.2 drives on the back, and it should line up pretty well with them, so you can change them in and out without actually taking the whole motherboard out. To install the hard drives, they actually do have these little plugs here, so there's no additional wiring. You simply just add some little feet to it, which they provide you in the bag, and then just click it into place, and it's all ready to go. On the bottom, as you can tell, when we said that we can take the feet off, there's these extra screws here, and here that you can simply just undo with a screwdriver, and then the feet will actually just pop straight off, and you can put those extra spongy pads in. Now when it comes to actually taking the case apart, it actually comes apart in just two pieces. It's very simple, and you do that from the rear here with two screws. These are actually machine screws now, so they go into metal pegs, and they're pretty much what you would standardly get on a normal computer. All you do is you take them out like that, flip the case back over, hold this part down, and just crack the case there, and then it should slide up and off the front. Again, this has a certain clip system all across the front here, so it can't come off at the front. You have to take it off at the back and then kind of slide it forward a little bit. But that's the extra panel that you get with the glass. It is tinted glass as well, and it's pretty thick, and you can't actually, well, I don't believe that you can take it out. There are some little tiny pegs inside of here. Maybe that will actually allow you to take the panel out, and maybe you can actually replace it for a mesh one yourself if you wanted to give that a go. But I like the glass effect, it looks really cool. Inside the case, as we can see from the front, we've got all the extra cabling that we need, and as you can tell, you do get a PSU included. Now I suspect that that's included because this is going to be so specific, and this is a custom kind of sized PSU, that they've had to include it anyway. Because there is no way of actually expanding to any kind of GPU or that, they don't include you a 6-pin PCIe. All you get is the 24-pin, an 8-pin for your CPU, and one SATA connection. And that SATA connection actually wires itself onto the SATA connection that is bridged off of a splitter just in there that goes to the 2 hard drives in the bottom. So in actual fact, you don't really get a SATA, it's used up straight away. You also get the SATA connection, so you can plug them onto the motherboard. Can be a little bit annoying because obviously they're just including more and more cables in here, and you might not necessarily need them if you use M.2 drives, but it's okay for people that don't. You also have an HD audio front panel, which has got all the different wires, but obviously you've only got one little plug at the front here, which is probably going to be the mic and headphones in one. And you get a cable which is all in black for your front I/O. That's all pretty standard. Clearly there's not a lot of space in this case. You are just about going to be able to fit a mini ITX board, and you do have a certain height requirement when it comes to your coolers, so be careful which ones you purchase. They also do include a 92mm fan, which is toolless, so it simply clicks in and it sits on some pegs. You can take that out quite difficultly by the look of it. Actually, you have to do the bottom one first, so you pull the pegs down and then this fan will come out. It's a nice little 92mm fan. I'm not sure how well it works or how loud it is. I'm sure we'll find out when we put something in the system. Now, apart from all this wiring inside that you have to try and compete with once we actually start getting things fitted, you do have this rear I/O, which you'll just put a normal I/O shield in, or if your motherboard's got one, it'll fit in there just the same. And on the bottom where you've got an air intake here, you do have a mesh filter in. Now, to remove that mesh filter in, you do need another screwdriver, and they've got 2 of those plasticky eating in screws just here. And just here. And then the panel will actually just slide straight out. So that is the panel that you actually get. It's not actually too fine, to be honest. I'm not sure what kind of dust this is actually going to collect because it's quite thick actually. I'm not sure if you can see that on camera, but they are quite thick or quite wide holes on that one. So again, it'll do some kind of clearance of dust, but it's not going to be brilliant. The fan of the PSU is actually on the bottom here as well. We won't take the PSU out because there's no need to do that, but there is the fan on the PSU there, which is quite a small one. Again, not quite sure yet how noisy that will be, but we will see once we drop something in it. Okay, so we've taken a bit of a tour of the outside, and we've also done a bit of a tear down to take a tour of the inside. We know what we're dealing with, a lot of wires, a very small space. But how easy is this to actually build into? To find out, we're going to drop a motherboard in it, and we've prepared one earlier in the form of this. Now, this is a very basic setup. It's an AMD setup. We have an AMD APU in here, a bit of G.Skill Trident Z memory. We are running an M.2 drive on this board, and it's a Asus Prime A320, so it's very basic all round. But the M.2 will obviously mean we won't need to install any extra hard drives in the bottom, so we won't be demonstrating that, but we will still have to deal with the cabling, which is probably going to be the important thing. Now, the first thing we need to do is obviously install our I/O shield. We don't want to forget that, and that's a very simple way of doing it. We just insert it into the back, just like this, and it's exactly the same as any other case, except you're actually going into plastic now, not steel. So we have to make sure that it pops, and we don't want to break anything, and we just need to lower the board down. Obviously, mini ITX boards only mount down in the 4 corners, which is great because that's what they provided us. We'll try and move all these cables out of the way, get it slid into the back, and we'll push it into place. Now, the pegs that this actually does sit on, they do actually ride straight through the hole, so you can actually line it up and it won't go anywhere. We'll drop some screws in this and we'll make sure that it's secure, and then we'll have a go at doing the cabling. So we've got a motherboard in, and now we're going to have a look at trying to do those cables. Obviously the one that goes to the hard drives does need to go onto the SATA connection that it gives you. Just like that, and we're going to have to try and hide that away in a minute. We'll have a look at the power one. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear it might just fit. The power one actually would probably be better around here, which is quite interesting because this motherboard is actually quite a generic kind of setup, but we'll get the power one on here and we'll run that cable across there. It's not going to be pretty, but we can always stick that down a little bit. Obviously we'll need to get our fan on, and fortunately the headers are right next to it, so we'll get one of them on there, just like that. Took those wiring down there, and now we need to deal with this big mess. So first we'll get the 24 pin one in. It's generally the way we do it anyway. Bigger systems, and then we've got lots and lots of cables. Now the problem with these cables are they're actually the wrong way around, so we can't flip them straight over like that and put them in. We're going to have to twist them as they go round, but what I might do is actually wrap them, twist them round. That's one cable in there. We'll get the front IO put on, and then the other cable, we'll put a twist in it. We'll twist it round. Try and hide that cable up as much as we can. Tucking these ones in here. I can see trying to put the lid on this afterwards is going to be a bit of a pain. HD audio actually goes all the way across the other side of the board, so which is not going to be good enough. So we're not going to be able to connect the HD audio. They've put it in, the cable's just not long enough. It won't even reach if we go over the top of the memory. Well, it might do if we go over the top of the memory, but then we're going to be blocking the fan. So what we'll do is we'll not bother with the HD audio. That's a little bit annoying. And then we've obviously got the USB 3, which is going to go over the top and put in here, just like that. So cable wise, it's not actually that clean. If we get some cable ties and we actually cable tie some of this down, maybe it would probably look a lot better. But for now, that's what we're going to do. We'll just tuck these away so they don't jump up, and we'll see if we can get the system to run. Now, before we obviously plug this in, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to try and get this lid on. I think it will go on quite easily, although that might look a bit of a mess, but because we've got the tinted glass, maybe it won't make a difference. So we'll try and click the front on, which I think we're already hitting some cables already. It's hitting something. There we go. I just click down. So yeah, everything actually does fit into the case. I'm not very happy with that cable management. Maybe if you spend a bit more time on it and you actually loop things around a few times, maybe it would work. But we'll get these screws in the bottom, which should hold the lid on a lot better. One in there. One in there. And that's our mini system built. It doesn't take too long to do this, particularly if you've already built the motherboard. It's a very easy case to work with. It's just a bit of a shame around those different cables in the front, particularly if you're not going to use them. Now, if you are not going to use the things in the back, the hard drive caddies in the back, you could actually unscrew those cables altogether, and you could get rid of the extra SATA port that you'll need to play or try and hide. You'll get rid of the actual SATA data cables as well, so that'll give you a little bit more space, but that doesn't resolve the problem with the HD audio. Maybe if it's a different motherboard and that HD audio is a bit further to the front of the board, it would actually work and you might be able to go around stuff, but this board generally has a pretty standard layout, so that's a bit of a shame that they didn't check it in that kind of way. But that's it, our system's actually built and it's ready to go. Now our little system is up and running, and as you can see, it looks pretty good. With the extra lighting inside, it looks really cool, and it would be really nice to be able to get a light on the M.2 drive, just to put a little bit of light in the bottom there. But once you've actually coloured it up and themed it to whatever you want, it'll look really cool. Maybe something in an orange for us, because we love Half-Life. It's kind of the Half-Life thing. and this little box with a decent APU in would be a perfect little Half-Life machine to do it. It's pretty simple to build into, although you do need to be aware of the thermal issues you will get if you don't have a decent enough cooler on it, because of the amount of air that can actually get in it. Particularly when it's here, the only air you can have is actually going to be from the bottom, which is pretty covered up once it's actually on this little stand. So maybe it is better if you actually put it this way round, and then it would actually go underneath a TV stand or something like that. Pretty cool. I prefer it standing up. I think it looks way better when it's on its little stand, just like this, ready to go next to a TV or something. And the fan that's actually in it isn't too loud. If we have just a bit of a listen, there's a little bit of a tick on that fan. I don't really like it. I'd prefer to drop something like a Noctua in it, because they're going to be much better in performance and much quieter as well. So maybe we'll do that with this case when we actually do put our final build into it. But it's not that loud. There is a little tick on it, but generally there is quite a lot of air actually coming out of it as well. So anyway, that is the InWin B1 Mini ITX tower case. Let me know in the comments what you think about this case. Would you actually consider one for your build? Or would you prefer one of the actual mesh models that they do? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like the content. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.